Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller, and this is a podcast for your personal evolution. In this episode, who are you aside from what you do and what you produce? So the episode is a dive into the awakening of self-awareness and a connection to what really matters in your life. And this has been my journey for the past few years as I've unraveled my identity from what I do and what I achieve and learn to embrace who I am aside from any producing or achievements, which at first I couldn't even conceive of. So my guest here is a kindred spirit in having worked themselves to the bone to prove their worth to themselves and everyone else. Jen Fisher. She's a global authority on workplace well-being, the best-selling author of Work Better Together, and the founder and CEO of the Wellbeing team. So Jen was Deloitte's US first chief well-being officer who pioneered a groundbreaking human-centered approach to work that gained international recognition and reshaped how organizations view well-being, or at least the ones that adopted her concept. Well, from her personal experiences with burnout and cancer to her role as a trailblazer in well-being intelligence, Jen has dedicated her career to helping people thrive physically, mentally, and emotionally. So Jen has a new book titled Hope is the Strategy, the underrated skill that transforms work, leadership, and well-being. As you're about to hear, Jen shares. She says, my identity had slowly merged with my output, and I became what I produced. Who can relate to that other than myself? She says she realized she had no real hope in anything, so she just worked to stay busy, filling the void with production and accomplishment. She was languishing in performance with profound emotional emptiness. Finally, she says, I began to understand that productivity is a tool. It's not a purpose. That work is a part of life, but not its meaning. And that doing is important, but being is essential. Today, she focuses on doing less, but doing activities of more value and questioning what all she is doing for external validation alone. Again, if you've been listening to my shows recently, you're going to hear a lot of those terms there that have been overlapping for myself, my own journey. So coming up next, my discussion with Jen Fisher and who you are and can be aside from, again, what you do and what you produce. Let's evolve ourselves today. Jen, in reading your book, it's one of the few books, if not the only, that I almost wish I had started from the back, because your ending conclusion really summed everything up for me to the point of this may be the title of the show, From Performance to Presence. That was the most dear aspect of it to me. And that's what I want to talk about today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about that and many more things.
Well, your journey, I imagine you've had other folks that have said this too, but I feel it. I look at the past. I've really had a deconstruction over the past really 4 to 5 years of being, there was a line that you had in the book as well. I took way more notes than we're going to get through. And it was going from, one of the lines you said was going from superhuman to just to human, to being an actual human. And I remember the start points that started my deconstruction from burnout. But what I read in your book, I think the most difficult thing for my own deconstruction or transformation, as you talk about, was the disorientation around my own identity. And that's what I felt you speaking to so much in the book that I resonated with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it. I think we, especially those of us that consider ourselves high performers, maybe type A, but we live and work in these environments that are either high performing or just generally the world around us is constantly bombarding us with messages that say you're not enough, what you have isn't enough, what you do isn't enough. And so we're constantly striving and holding ourselves to a standard and identifying with that standard that when it all falls away or we burn out, we don't know who we are anymore.
I've got so many questions for you because this is, again, has been such a stark part of my own journey that I still feel like is in full-fledged mode of a new evolving me.
Mm.
And when we look at high achiever, you use that word. How do you look at yourself now? How would you define that? You have gone from high achiever to what?
I still think I'm a high achiever. I think that that's the misconception, right?
Okay.
I think our definition of what high achiever is wrong. You're led to believe that a high achiever is a person that sacrifices themselves at all costs. They are the last thing that gets taken care of, the last thing that gets thought about. They are, the first to respond to every email. They are the first, the hustle and grind culture, the executives that we see that, say they wake up at 2:45 in the morning and do 700 sit-ups. That is what we've been told that success and high achievement is. And I think we need to question, is that high achievement? Like, is that really what we want? And so I still consider myself a high achiever. I still consider myself with a lot of ambition, but it's realistic ambition. And it's not ambition that is killing me or forcing me to be someone that I'm not or fit myself into a mold of someone else's definition of success that's not mine.
Okay. Does this resonate, Jen? I have, my own book is What Drives You. And I have seen, because I don't feel less driven. Like you said, I don't feel like I'm not a high
Yeah.
achiever, but I'm measuring it differently. Instead of, if I go for a mountain bike ride today, there are sometimes when I still just love going fast, and setting a PR
Yeah.
feels great. But sometimes my drive has changed to stop at the high mountain lake and go sit there and get the slowest time ever. The drive is still there, but it just has a different measurement. Does that track?
Yeah. Yeah. That absolutely tracks. And I mean, I think that that's a much healthier way to think about high achievement.
Well, you said too, and I'm bringing it back to mind now. You talked about, gosh, it was some aspect of from high production, lots of content, to value, making sure that you're
Yeah.
providing. I think about that, Jen, really in regards even to my kids, where I have been in the past. I'm super dad, super fixer, Superman, take care of everything. I am doing so much less for my children of the actual doing. And I'm being, instead of doing, I'm
Yeah.
being. And I see, and I've had some of them testify, I'm the safe place now. They trust me. They want to interact and engage with me. And I feel like they're getting so much more value out of my being than my doing. It's great, though I still feel almost a little disoriented with it.
Yeah. I mean, because you, like many of us, me too. I mean, you believe your value is in doing, but your value to your kids and probably everybody else in your life that cares about you is your being and your presence. And you don't always have to be doing. Like sometimes the to do is to show up and be there and to do nothing but be there.
I think it was in the latter part of your book, Jen, you talked about some corporate gathering and they were talking about some of the biggest influences in your life, like who's really influenced you. And I think you said, I think it was a grandmother, something like that.
Mhm.
that also has been convicting for me to think about, who do I want to be with? Who do I want to hang out
Yeah.
with? And at this point, the super go-getter, high achiever, I just exhaust myself. That's not who I
Yeah.
want to be with. Somebody, back to performer and presence. I want to be with somebody who's present. And that was so acute to me. And then I thought, well, but am I that person? Am I the person that other people feel is present? And I don't think that that's who I've been, but it puts such a different spin on, yeah, who we think we want to be, in regards to thinking, who do I want to be with? And am I that type of person for someone else? How's that feel?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's absolutely right. And I think it's hard. I mean, we don't live in a world that necessarily rewards us for being present. And I think that that's part of the reason why we are where we are. The world tends to reward us for activity.
Yeah.
And not and to your point and what I describe in the book, and activity doesn't necessarily equal value.
Yeah.
And so are you adding value for others? Are you adding value for yourself, or are you just going through the motions because you think that's what's expected of you? So absolutely, I mean, there's nothing more important than you can give someone. Is the most important thing is your presence. It's not even your time, because you could be with somebody for a long period of time, and if they're distracted and all over the place and not present with you, who cares? But you can be with somebody for a short period of time and be all in and be super focused and super present with them, and that was the best 15 minutes of their day or their week or their month. And so it's not really even about time. It's about how present were you? Did you make them feel like they mattered? Did you add, meaning and purpose to their day? Not were you physically there in body.
You, speaking of time, you said, you wrote in the book that you now look at time as, instead of something to be overcome, something to inhabit. I like that terminology. And I, in a sense, thinking of a snapshot, what does Jen's day today, most days, look like, as opposed to back before this concept, this transformation?
Yeah. So before this transformation, or what I would say, led to burnout ultimately, was I was one of those people that believed I would sleep when I was dead. And so, sleep became, how little of it can I get and still get by? So 3 to 4 hours, which seems ridiculously insane when I say that out loud.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine.
I don't know how I functioned, and clearly I didn't function well. But the funny thing is I thought I was functioning well. Sleep became a performance metric, not in the positive. It was the metric was, how little of it can I get, not how much of it can I get. I prided myself on the fact that I went to the gym for an hour a day. So therefore, I was fit, I was exercising, I was healthy because I went to the gym. The other 20 hours a day, I was working, or, something that was work adjacent or related to work. I either had my head buried in my laptop, on my phone. I was maybe physically present with other people, but always going through my to-do list for tomorrow, or a conversation that I had that day where I was annoyed by what the person said, or I was annoyed by how I showed up, or, I never had that ability to detach from work, because that's who I believe that, I mean, that's who my identity was so tied to that. And I also believed that that's why people cared about me. I thought that that's what people thought was interesting about me was my work stories and where I traveled to last and who I talked to. And the truth is nobody really cared about that. It was interesting. It was good fodder for conversation, but that's not why they wanted to be around me.
That's interesting, Jen. It was as you said that, what went through my head is it was impressive. A lot of the
Yeah.
achievements we do are impressive, but not really inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hadn't thought
Yeah.
of that. Let me ask you about, as we pursue our own transformation, pursue our own change, I'm aware that we can, like, I could testify that, oh, I have changed. I've done this, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, I've changed. And I want to think that I've got a pulse on my own change. However, I really impact myself when others testify to my change.
Mhm.
I had a message from a friend this morning, longtime friend. I've known him for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And he expressed how he experiences me differently, more present, more at peace, slowed down, all these things. And that meant more to me. Well, it meant in a sense everything, because, I want to think I've changed. On that note, how you shared some of this in the book, but even today, I mean, your husband, the people that you work with, family members, whatever it is, how have they testified to the change they have experienced in you?
Yeah. I mean, I think the very first time I got feedback like that, I talked about it in the book where I did have a team member after, an in-person team meeting that we were having. It was a younger, team member, a newer team member who said to me, wow, this was really different. You were really with us today. And that's where it kind of comes to presence. And, you tend, and it kind of stopped me in my tracks because I I guess I was trying to be more present, and that was the intent, but there was an immediate recognition of that. Like, it wasn't like I had to do that 5 or 6 times for them to be like, "Oh, wow, Jen is now with us." It was like the very first time that I intentionally was like, "I'm gonna put my phone, not turn my phone over. I'm gonna put my phone away. It is not gonna be in sight, and I'm going to engage directly. I'm not going to be looking down, taking notes. I'm going to be looking people in the eye." And there was an immediate response to that.
Yeah.
Um, Similarly, with friends and I mean, people would call it out all the time. And it is validating, it's reassuring. But to your point, I think you you also notice it and like life feels different to you. It doesn't feel, at least for me, it doesn't feel distracted and fragmented. And I actually remember conversations that I have with people because I'm not doing 6 other things or thinking about something else. And so the way I feel at the end of the day feels better. I feel more energized. I sleep better at night. Like, I don't, I guess the best way to explain it is I was frazzled and fragmented all the time, and that showed up in every single relationship.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I mean, I feel more peace. I feel more security. I feel more fulfillment. I feel like everything is richer and more beautiful. It's all good. But something you said a minute ago, nobody's handing out awards for that, at least not in the culture. Now, I feel rewards specifically from my kids and some of my friends. I do feel like I'm getting their hearts, and I just watch that unfold, and that is, it couldn't be more gratifying. But out there in the world, especially in the corporate culture that you have been in and still are, that's got to be, it's still got to be difficult for folks to go, okay, so I'm going to give up these, because we applaud, the culture applauds all the achievement. They'll applaud you, working yourself to death, literally. And to be over here, I don't know of an award where they go, you know what, we figured out this dude or this lady, they're the most peaceful person in the neighborhood or in the state. There's no Nobel Prize for being, oh my gosh, they are the most contented, peaceful, present person. There's no worldly rewards. And so to give that up, it's kind of that quandary of what was that? The Goldman theory, will we go for achievement at the risk of our own health? A lot of people say, yeah.
Yeah. Look, and I don't know that it's that black and white, because I do think that when you get clear on who you are and how you want to show up and what your values are and your own definition of success, I wouldn't say you stop comparing yourself to others, because that's kind of impossible.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be honest. But you become more comfortable in your own skin and in your own definition of success. And you don't need the external validation of, kind of yet another reward or another, thank you for staying up all night email from your boss. And I would even go as far as saying that I believe your performance actually is enhanced when you are much more aligned in your values and your own definition of success. You know what matters to you. You're able to set, goals and achieve those goals. You're not fragmented. You're not all over the place. You're able to say yes and show up for the things that really matter in your work life and your personal life. And you're comfortable in setting boundaries and saying no to the things that aren't aligned, and that may be better suited for someone else. And so I would argue that I don't think it negatively impacts your performance. I think in many ways it positively impacts your performance. It's just performing in the things that you want to perform in and not, trying to perform in everything, because that's impossible anyway. And so, yeah, I mean, does the corporate world like hustle? Do they like people that are potentially addicted to their work? Of course, because they benefit from that. But only for a short period of time, because it's not sustainable. I don't care how good you are. It's just not sustainable. If you don't burn out, you become very cynical. You become difficult to work with and work for. You're very transactional in nature, because you're just all about getting things done. You have no relationships, personally or professionally. They're all transactional. And I just don't think that people are truly happy. So it's just not sustainable in my mind. And so is that really performance?
Okay, let's talk about truly happy. I mean, I'm sure you're aware, like I am, there are so much focus on happiness. We've got books and podcasts, and it's very common. I'm questioning if that's what we really want overall. Now, I think it's what I want, but do we as a culture? I was thinking as I was reading your book, Jen, the parable of the Mexican fisherman. Most people know that one. He hangs out all day, has fun, and they say, have more ships and do more. And then in 20 years, you can do what you're doing today, hang out and have fun. But we're back to that. Yeah, but if he goes and gets more boats and has a big business and has employees and has whatever, it's impressive. In the culture, it's impressive. I mean, he'll, VIP and he's going to be noticed, but he may not be happy. But again, I feel like some of what you're writing about, what you're talking about, calls us to audit. What do we really want? Like for me to get honest to myself. And if I just want achievement and I go, no, you know what? I don't care about being happy or my well-being. Really. I want to kick butt and I want to be noticed for it. Okay. Well, I guess that's authentic. It's honest. Fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of a calling us to the table on what do we really want? And you use the word, which I really appreciate because it's one that I continue to come back to, is well-being. Well-being.
Yeah.
Are we interested in our well-being, or do we want to, I was going to say I want to achieve, but then I can hear you saying we don't have to polarize it, right? Can we do both? Fair?
I think we can do both. Just so first, I think there, especially in the workplace, we are seeing a lot of generational differences around what role work should play in my life, what I'm willing and not willing to do to sacrifice my well being. And so it's an interesting time to kind of think about or talk about how all of that might play out. But generationally, there's friction between kind of the, you know, older folks, which I would include mine. We were raised a certain way. We were told, you get asked by your boss to do something and you do it. And you don't ask questions, you just do it. And the younger generation wants a different way and they see a different way. And I would proffer to say that, and this is not a knock on parents, part of this is because a lot of them grew up with parents that were incredibly dedicated and loyal to their jobs and their companies. And so their kids got a lot of, on honey, I need to answer this email. But then their kids also watched them get laid off after 30 years of service at the same company. And so they're going, why would I do it that way? That doesn't make any sense. And the younger generation right now anyway tends to value well-being more than my generation did, and perhaps you did. It's very important to them. It's almost table stakes. I want to work for a company that respects my well-being and actually adds to my well-being, not detracts from it. And that's an expectation that is newer in the workplace. And so it's changing dynamics. Now, what I think is fascinating is this younger generation, are they going to change the system, or is the system going to change them? Because with you and I, the system changed us. And then we realized, wait, this isn't so great. They're seeing it at a very young age. So are they going to change the system? I hope so.
Well, okay, let me bring something else into that aspect then, because it feels like, so if we are, talking in the first chapter about identity, and we've already touched on that. We have been in a culture, it's the constant. So what do you do? And you answer with your work role. What do you, I mean, that's our core identity. If we now say, okay, I don't want work to define me, and like you're saying, this new generation with different values, I don't want work to define me, then maybe we need to help ourselves figuring out a new definition of what then does define me. If it's not my doing and my achievement, my accomplishment and my work, then if we're left with a void though, now I don't know how to answer it. So what do you do? I guess if you look at my life and videotape me, what do? I drink a lot of beverages throughout the day. I contemplate a lot and sit in my rocking chair. I mean, but
you're
literally,
a thinker. You're a thinker.
I'm a thinker. Yeah, but it does feel. Can we not help each other by maybe coming up with some new, I was going to say definitions, but some new concepts around my identity if it's not around my work.
But like how fun would that be if you met somebody for the first time and you were like, hey, like, who are you? What do you do? And they gave you some completely unexpected answer. Like, I love to read. I take, naps 4 times a week. And you're like, who is this person? But you're probably really curious about that person and you're leaning in and you're like, tell me more about this. So how fun would it be if that's how we started answering that question. I want to make it clear that I am not suggesting that work and what we do for a living is not important. It is if we want it to be. I just think that work should be a part of an overall meaningful life. It shouldn't overtake your life or be the only thing in your life. There's some people that will absolutely disagree with me. That'll say, I want my work to be my whole life. And that's your prerogative. But I do think that, look, for me, my work is a really meaningful part of my life. But if it all went away tomorrow, I think I'd also be okay.
Okay. What meaning do you attach to your work today?
So for me, my work is about helping others and also about living a life that can be an example for others to see that they can do the same. And so for me, I feel like I could do that in any job.
Yeah.
you know, and I think that that's what it's about. It's not, our jobs can matter, but what is it that we do in our jobs that make the job matter? Are we helping people? Are we leaving a legacy? Are we, I mean, as human beings, we're meant to connect, and we thrive. We were mentioning happiness earlier. What makes us most happy is helping others. Yet we live in this really individualistic society where we've moved so far away from that. And I do think it's why, especially in the US, I mean, the US unfortunately keeps dropping on the World Happiness Index. Year after year, we are getting worse in our level of happiness, especially with young people. And that's really frightening.
Agreed. So let's look at the aspect of work. I mean, so everybody for the most part works, and we're all involved in helping ultimately sell a product or a service. And I am at the age now where a lot of my peers, literally guys my age, a lot of them, they've made enough money. They're good. I mean, they're pretty much good from this point on. And a lot of them, not all of them, but there seems to be a majority who now they don't need the purpose of having to make money. And that was the primary purpose. And now they don't know what to do. And they're either
Yeah.
bored or they just find things to spend the money on because they've got it. And so let's just buy a new truck. I did last year already, but I'm going to buy the next one because of whatever. Or they start trying to find, where can I, kind of from an altruistic standpoint, where can I invest myself? I want to do something now that has actual meaning. But what you just said goes back to, regardless, here's what my paraphrasing of what you just said, Jen. Regardless of the product or service, wherever I'm at, I can, again, this is my paraphrasing. You tell me how it tracks. I can invest in relationships. I can serve other people. I can help them. You said live life, I live as an example and inspire them in a sense. How's that track?
Yeah, I think you summed that up. I think you summed that up really well. And I don't think that what you're describing with your friends is unusual. I certainly saw that in my father. He was a partner at a big four accounting and consulting firm. He had a great career after that. He went on to be in investment banking, and he worked into his 70s. And when he retired, he was miserable. He was depressed. He didn't know what to do with himself. And ultimately, he passed away because his meaning and purpose outside of taking care of his family, we grew up, we're taking care of ourselves now.
Yeah.
He didn't know what to do, because his hobbies had fallen away, his relationships had fallen away. And that's, I don't think that that's unusual, but it's something that we have control over and that we can do something about now, and that we can also be aware of for our parents and grandparents, and try to help make sure that others don't fall into into that same trap. Because if you define your success and who you are by what you do for a job or how much money you make, when you're not doing that job anymore, what are you going to do? And you need to decide that before the time comes.
Yes. I also discussion with retirement, I was influenced a lot by, well, I started podcasting as host of The Ziglar Show with Zig Ziglar. And
Yeah.
I got to see his life. And then my own dad, who was a student of Zig's. And those were both guys who later in life were so interested in just figuring out how they could keep doing what they were doing because they just loved it. They viewed
Yeah.
themselves like you did, serving other people and inspiring, and they loved it. And so when my dad was, early 70s, he was planning out the next 20 years of his life and excited about what he's going to do, and
Yeah.
didn't understand his peers who were just waiting to, quit the job and who already had, and he felt like they're just bored. So I like that aspect of it as well. If you really enjoy
Yeah.
what you're doing past the paycheck and whatever, and have, well, again, they would be good examples of people who held their well-being right alongside whatever it is they were accomplishing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, if they're in their 70s and planning for the next 20 years, then they're feeling pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. Is, looking at we need to make a buck. Most people do need to make $1. We've got bills to pay. There's things that we do want. I do find myself looking now at my own life and others and going, yeah, but aside from that, how much are we doing? This sounds bad. Let me try to find a better way to say it. I was going to say, to some extent, is it really necessary? How much are we doing that it's hard to make a case for it being that necessary? Why are we trying to produce so much? And to some degree, I think you hit on it in your book. Without doing that, we kind of then are left to look at ourselves and consider our
Yeah.
place in this earth. And if there's nowhere to go, then it's just easier to be busy. Fair?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And look, I mean, again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money, but to what end, right? What is it that more, and I talk about, and I said it before, we kind of live in a world of more, and we think that we have enough, but somehow we think more is going to make us happier. And so the pursuit what is the pursuit of more for? The pursuit of more isn't always wrong, but what's it for? And what is the outcome going to be? Is it just more for the sake of more? That's not going to make you happy. So I think it is looking at, why am I doing what I'm doing? What is it that I need, or what is enough? I think if you look at, you know, we were talking about retirement, and a lot of times people wait to retire because they don't think that they have enough. And then when they retire, they end up dying and they don't get to enjoy what they have.
Yeah.
Now, that's not true for everybody. That's a much more privileged perspective, right? But it happens quite, because we believe that what we have is never enough, and we don't take the time to enjoy what we have and what we've accomplished so far. That doesn't mean we can't continue to pursue other and new and different things, but enjoy what you have while you have it.
Yes. I know the book is not about burnout specifically. You do start off talking about burnout. And that was one of the things that I kind of drew myself in with, was my own story of burnout. And yeah, this, putting in the hours like what you were doing, sleeping 3 or 4 hours a day. I don't know how to justify that and how that can add to our well-being and the well-being of others. That said, I had a friend questioning burnout and say, maybe it's not about burnout comes from working too much. maybe it just comes from not really being fulfilled in what we're doing. Because when we find the
Yeah.
people, back to Zig Ziglar and my dad, both those guys had to work, had to work. They had to endeavor not to work so much because they loved what they did. So they had to put it away
Yeah.
and be present. They had that issue too, but it was out of it. They just loved what they did as well. So there was
Yeah.
no burnout. So thoughts on that, that maybe it's not all about how much we work or not, but the fulfillment.
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely true. And in the book, I argue that a lot of what we are naming and claiming as burnout right now is not actually burnout, it's hopelessness. And especially in the workplace. You know, so to the point of your father and Zig, challenging hard work doesn't burn people out. As a matter of fact, people rise to the occasion when work is hard. What burns people out is, you know, work overwhelm, not feeling like I'm valued, not feeling like what I do matters, not feeling like anyone in the workplace knows me, cares about me, has my back. Those are the types of things, those are the types of things and the types of work environments that tend to burn people out. Yes, work overload does, right? If you're just buried under your work. But if you're buried under so much work, then somebody in the workplace doesn't care about you. Like, why are you so buried?
Hmm.
Why aren't you able to raise your hand and say, I need help, I can't do this, right? Like, those are, to me, are kind of symptoms of a work culture that isn't working and that is creating hopelessness. And I think, if you stay in hopelessness too long, you become helpless, and helplessness leads to burnout because you throw your hands up and you're like, well, nothing's ever going to change. And so to me, and in my own experience, as I reflect back on burnout, there was the belief that the only reason I was valued was because of my work. But then the other side of that was hopelessness. Was, I can't see a better future. I can't see a way to do it differently. And that is a huge drain on your mental and physical capacity. And so I agree with you. If you love what you do, if you're energized by what you do, if you're challenged by what you do, and that is balanced appropriately with other things in your life that also matter, you won't burn out.
I'm just interested with it because I'm living it right now. I'm involved in work right now that I care about more than anything I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
I think it will serve humanity in a dramatic way. But I almost have to make myself work some because I'm finding so much joy in other things, like
Yeah.
thinking and sitting in my rocking chair or going on a run or
You're
a
a thinker.
walk.
I want you to start introducing yourself as a thinker.
I'm good with that. Professional thinker. Can I do that?
Yeah. Yeah, of
I,
course.
I do. Well, I want to hit on hopelessness though. Because as you were talking, Jen, I was thinking, if we find ourselves just there, yeah, what are we hoping in and feeling kind of hopeless? Then do you feel like that's driving this is my word, the medication of production, performance, accomplishment? Because without that, then it's hopeless. So at least just fill the time, do something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's absolutely it. I think it's that. I think the hopelessness right now is probably caused by a lot of things. But look, I think that part of also what is driving inside of a lot of organizations the overwork and the culture of busyness is a lack of hope. It's a lack of certainty. There's a ton of uncertainty in the working world right now. Companies are laying people off left and right. The messaging that we're all getting is that, AI is going to take our job. It's not a positive message. It's not a reinforcing message. and we're just living in a time where everything is disrupted. Organizations go through transformation after transformation. Leadership changes happen constantly, which means strategies change constantly. So, when you feel like you've got a leg up, the strategy changes, right? And so that kind of churn creates hopelessness. I also think that, and I talk about this in the book, that, people are really good at, well, I shouldn't say really good. The worst thing for human beings is uncertainty. We're terrible living with and sitting with uncertainty. And that is the world we're living in, especially in the workplace. But my message to leaders is, we need to start being truthful. We need to start telling the truth. We need to start naming the hard truths, because people are actually much better at hearing and processing difficult news than they are sitting in uncertainty. Because if you give me news that I don't like, I can sit with it, I can process it, I can choose what my next steps are, I can do something. If everything is always uncertain, I don't know what my next move is. I have no ability to choose or to do something differently, because I don't even know what's going on. You're not being truthful with me. You are not telling me what I need to hear. You're not giving me the information. And so I think, the number one thing that leaders can do, or that any of us can do in any relationship in our life, is be honest. Whether it's good or bad, be honest.
Jen, I had a guest on, or we recorded a show yesterday, and she cited a study that was done where people were given the chance to 100% chance you are going to get shocked, or 50% chance.
And everybody wanted to get shocked.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that, but I totally align with it. Yeah, if it's either or, I just go ahead and shock me.
Just give it to me and get it over with. Yeah.
Well, so what a terrible depiction of life then, of going, well, if it's uncertain, let me just go with the certainty, even though it sucks.
Yeah.
We need a different security.
Yeah. Yeah.
The uncertainty keeps talking about. I mean, I know we keep saying, I struggle with that. It feels more uncertain than ever. But if we went back through time, I bet people are complaining about it always. The uncertainty, the change. And yet it feels like insanity that we're trying to certainty everything, that we just can't. Life is evolving.
No, you can't. And, I think as a leader, and I do talk about this in the book too, and it's not a semantics game, but I do think that first of all, our behaviors matter, but also the way that we communicate. Words mean something to people, and the way that we talk to people as a leader matters. When we say things like, that's not the way we do it here, or we tried that before and it didn't work, that kind of kills someone's motivation. It kills their hope. It kills they're going to say, okay, well, I'm never going to bring Kevin ideas again because he just shoots me down. Now, I learned this in my own life as a leader, right? I'm not judging people that do that, but I learned this the hard way, as they say. And I used to think saying things like that meant that I was responsible. I'm giving them the responsible answer. I'm telling them not to waste their time on an idea that I know won't work. Well, how do I know that idea won't work?
Yeah.
And so I think, or, if there is a lot of uncertainty, saying, look, I don't know how this is going to play out, but what I do know is that I believe in our ability to get through it together. Let them know you have their back. Let them know that you are there for them, regardless of what happens. You yourself might not be able to control it, but you can give and it's not about lying. It's not about playing with words, but like, hey, I'm here. I've got your back. I don't know what's going to happen. I can't guarantee a certain outcome, but I can be here for you and we can figure it out together, whatever it is. That in itself creates certainty, like, okay, we can all accept that nobody knows how this is going to play out, but at least I know somebody sees me and values me and it has my back and is here to help me. And I think that that's what people are looking for because none of us know what's going to happen ever, to your point.
Yeah, well, and you've got me. I mean, I think about the insecurity. We want to be secure at the core. I mean, that's survival mode. We want to be secure. But if I can be secure, I can be secure in the uncertainty when, yeah, when I feel, safe in essence. And I appreciate, I was looking through my notes here. You talked about that in the book about the idea of, questions, not like you said, not evaluating everything and assessing everything, but asking questions. That feels like that's a safe place. That's a safe place.
Yeah, like, what is it that really interests you about this idea? Why do you think that this is going to work? Asking people questions about their ideas versus even if you think it will never work, engaging with them in the idea and helping get them to the conclusion that maybe it won't work or maybe it will work. Maybe they'll say something that you never thought of. But I think as leaders, we often think as parents, as friends, we often think like the responsible leaderly thing to do is tell somebody that it's not going to work because we know it's not going to work. And that's not the responsible leaderly thing to do.
Well, and to your questions, because I read through, you've got kind of a graph. Instead of saying this, say this.
Yeah.
And I felt like I can tell the person, chances of that are just the snowball's chance in hell. It's not going to work. But if I ask the right question, I'll either one, help them discover that on their own, which will be a lot better connection and a lot more integrated in them. Or son of a gun, what if they share something that kind of pops my evaluation bubble and I learn? Either it's a win-win. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how do you lose in that, right? And in doing that, you build connection, right? Like you're telling them, I see you, you matter, and I'm here to be present and listen to what it is that you have to say. And people are like, oh, well, I don't have time. Yeah, you do have time. This is the most important time you will spend.
Well, and you talk in the book about being a hope dealer, which I like.
Yeah.
And giving people hope. Here's something that it was actually in that chapter I found myself thinking about and contemplating, Jen, was, again, back to what do we want? Do we want to be impressive? And as I was reading the book, I thought, I think we so often at heart we want to be revered, more than being happy. I want to be important.
Yeah.
And so I do, and I do, and I do, and I do. And I've been in that realm as well. I thought I had to earn my my validation. I had to earn everything from people. Today, as I do less than I ever have. My production per se, as far as at least number of items, is less than it ever has been. But I would say, well, and I've had testimony that if we call it, I kind of like that word revered. We like to be, but being revered, being respected, being trusted, I'm literally having people, including my kids, say that that's increasing with me. And again, it feels totally counterintuitive. Are you kidding me? I'm just I don't feel like I'm doing anything. I'm being. And yet that's what's more attractive. That message, which I feel like you impart in the book, that's a different measurement. That's a gift. That's a different measurement. That feels like a bridge to get us out of this identity around what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I would even go further to say that while you might feel like you're not doing anything, you likely are. And the things that you're doing them much better than you ever have before. And that's why people are taking notice.
I don't even want to make this correlation, but I'm gonna. Because I want the focus to be on well-being, my own well-being, and not to have it have a work payoff. But to what you said, I do think about that now. How can where did I get this idea of, working myself like you did, just working ourselves to the bone?
Yeah.
The people I revere, I actually think of, and I don't know a lot about him. I haven't read a lot about him. It was something that I read at some point about Richard Branson. So most people know Richard
Hmm.
Branson, Virgin Airlines and Virgin everything. But it was some article about him or an interview, and he talked about how little he worked, but how powerful his work was. And it was something, I'm making up the exact details, but something like in 20 minutes, he says, I make decisions that are so powerful that it's worth more than what I used to put out in 20 hours. And I thought,
Yeah.
I want to do that. And I do feel that way, Jen, that the work that I do now with the time, 2 hours of thinking, then I produce something in 20 minutes that's worth so much. It's so valuable, so
Yeah.
deep. And I look over here and go, what the hell was I doing working 10 hours a day before? I can't even get my brain to function that deeply, which goes back to what you talked about. You felt like you were you're working or sleeping 3 or 4 hours a day, but working the
Yeah.
rest. But how much were we getting out of you?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that you say that because it's, so often we go into, we're given a problem or we're told we need to make a decision about something and we go right into problem solving instead of stepping back, and actually thinking about the bigger picture and the problem. And oftentimes when we go right into, I got to solve this problem, I got to make this decision right now,
Yeah.
we we miss what really matters, and that's why we make decisions that are not great decisions or feel fragmented. And so what I heard you say is like you step back and you think about it for 2 hours and then it takes you 20 minutes to actually do the thing. Whereas most people dive right into doing the thing without thinking about doing the thing, right? Like about without, doing the work of like, oh wait, let me take the big picture, let me look from the outside in, let me think about it from all these different angles and think about what am I missing before I go in to solve the problem. And that does make your decisions and the things that you do much higher value because it's based on thought versus doing.
I, I'm not going to project it on everybody else, but to me, yeah, it's profound. As I have gone through this transformation, I've come to things that I've done and going, what? That was so
What was
shoddily
I
done.
thinking?
Yeah. What was I thinking? And it makes no sense whatsoever. And then I redo it to where now today I'm still learning, but yeah, how often I'll come to a question or something that we're working on and not to just per se, just I got to sleep on it, but a lot of times, yeah, literally that and come back the next day and it's so
Yeah.
apparent. And thank God I didn't take action and get everybody working on whatever in the moment.
Yeah. Because it would have been wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Or at least
Yeah.
less valuable. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just there's a lot of wisdom in that, but it's not what we're taught. And
Mhm.
I think those of us that figure it out kind of figure it out of necessity or trial and error. And I didn't specifically address this in the book, but I've written some articles about it, and our obsession with productivity and how backwards that is. Productivity came about as a measure of machine output, and we have somehow taken that idea and that concept and applied it to humans that have thinking brains, essentially trying to turn humans into machines, right? Like, how much output can you create in a single day or in a single hour or in some defined amount of time? And that's not how human knowledge or human wisdom actually works. And to me, that's, is the promise in a positive way of AI, right? Is, we do have these machines that can create incredible output, but they will never replace human wisdom and human thinking and emotional intelligence and relational intelligence. And those are the things make th- that make us valuable, that make us human. but we've approached it in a very backwards way.
I think I appreciate what you said there, Jen, because as we look at AI, I look at it and go, it just can't. It can't give contextual and especially relational discernment. That's we get to own
it
that.
It can fake it.
It can, it can kind of give the pulse of the cultural thoughts on it, but in the moment, okay, you talked about productivity, and this is on page 8 of your, actually, that's not fair. I was going to say page 8, but I have a galley copy, but it's somewhere around there when the finished book comes out. And you said, or you wrote, I began to understand that productivity is a tool, not a purpose. I love that line. He actually went on to say, and I love the rest of it, that work is a part of life, not its meaning, and that doing is important, but being is essential. That line right there is worth the price of admission for me.
Is that the mic drop moment?
It kind of is, but I got one more. And it's really where you end the book. It's literally in the conclusion where you talk about, from performance into presence, but transformation from performance to presence. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 5 headlines there. And it was being present over being perfect. Number 2 is talking about boundaries. Number 3 was curiosity over certainty. Love that line. Curiosity is one of my favorite focal points now, especially over certainty, which I'm frustrate myself with the concept of certainty. Number 4, vulnerability, the value of vulnerability. And then 5 was sustainable impact over heroic effort. The last part, you're one of the few books, and I feel like you just kept ramping up. And you ended with, that's the transformative evolution I'm in right now. And you really laid it out. And I felt like you've been videotaping my life with the book there. And we could do another show just on those. I'm grateful for what you've done, for your
Thank you.
vulnerability in your own journey, and feel like, actually, I got one criticism for the book. You ready?
Okay, bring it.
And I don't want it so focused on the workplace. I know that's where your muse was and where you came from, but I feel like this is a self-help book. This is something that I want everybody to read, because it hits these key aspects of performance that our culture is based around, and we're missing presence. And we watch the mental health continue to decline. Like you talked about, happiness continue to decline. Something's not working. And my personal perspective, in having been in this industry and sat with the greatest of the greats, is that this is really, I think this is the key. I think this is a key issue right here that you're writing about.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'll take that criticism, and maybe there's a second edition that is a life version of it as opposed to a work. But I would say, and if you disagree, I think the lessons that I'm trying to impart in the book are based on the workplace, but are completely transferable to other aspects of our life. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I'll be doing the intro on this thing. And I've done, and I do this with other folks too. It's okay. The workplace was the muse here, but for me, it's completely personal. This is something that I would have my kids as students read. And because I feel like we're in a time right now where this is not working. If we can go from performance to presence, that's probably be the headline of this episode. Jen, I don't know if I can express any more how much I resonate and how much I appreciate what you have brought forth here and how you presented it. And I am grateful to receive it myself, and just really grateful to share it with everyone, my kids and my audience as well. So just thanks.
I love it. I love it. You are a definite example of a hope dealer. So thank you for that, because we need more in this world, and grateful for the conversation and how meaningful it was.
Well, there's my new bio. I am, what do you do? I think and I deal in hope. How's that?
Yep. I have it. Where is it? Oh, here you go.
Oh, I need that. Yeah, there you go. I'll give you I need one. Tell me.
I might know someone.
Okay.
I'll shoot you an email.
I was going to say, give me a purchase link and there's a good Christmas gift right there. Jen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us in this conversation. Again, that is Jen Fisher. And the book that I was referencing is called Hope is the Strategy, the underrated skill that transforms work, leadership, and well-being. Well, till next time, here is to the evolving you and me.
Yeah.